Hello, welcome to a new tutorial presented by DSC Child DB. In this tutorial, we are going to see the muscles of the neck and the organs in the neck. So let's start. In order to visualize the muscles of the neck, we are going to add up the different structures of the muscles. And we are going to add the different structure of the muscles from such that it should be removed from superficial to deep. So now, seeing these muscles, we can also add the different fascias so that it should be all round. So now you have the different fascias as such. Now this first muscle here is going to be called the platysma muscle, and now the platysma muscle has its particular motion that it performs. We said that in order for us to study the muscle, we need to know the origin, the insertion, and the origin, insertion, nerve supply, and arterial supply of that particular muscle. Now, the origin is the pectoralis fascia overlying the pectoralis major and deltoid muscles. So you have this, you see that this pectoralis fascia, you have the deltoid fascia. So this is the origin, and the insertion is at the inferior border of the mandible here. So this is the insertion. Now the action is the depression of the angle of the mouth. So let's see the action here. So action of the platysma. So visualize action of the platysma. Platysma action is as such. So you see how the platysma acts. Now, after visualizing the action of the platysma, we're going to pass on to the next portion, which is going to be the models. We are going to see the nerve supply to the platysma. So isolate the nerve supply to the platysma. We are going to have this. So you see that the platysma is going to receive the nerve supply from the fascial nerve. So the fascial nerve is going to have the cervical portion. The cervical portion of fascial nerve is the one which is going to supply our platysma, as we see here. So it passes from the stylomastoid process, goes out, has the temporal portion, and this one is the marginal mandibular, and the marginal mandibular is going to supply this upper portion, and the cervical portion is going to supply the lower portion of this platysma. So now the arterial supply to the platysma is, when we isolate it, we realize that it's going to come mainly from the fascial artery. So this is the main arterial supply involved in the platysma, and we slightly have the artery, this particular artery here. So this is a subclavian artery, and this particular artery is a suprascapular artery, and this other artery here is the suprascapular artery still. So these are the arterial supply involved with. So here we can see suprascapular artery, submental artery. So these are the two main arteries, submental artery here, and we have the suprascapular artery here. Now let's move back and see the next muscle. Since we have seen the platysma, we can now remove the platysma and visualize the next muscle underneath. So we hide it and we hide it. Now when we hide, now we now pass to the fascia. We have the fascia above here. This is deep cervical fascia. So we are going to see the content. So from here we see that the next thing is the deep cervical fascia after the platysma. So we hide the deep cervical fascia on both sides. So we remove the deep cervical fascia still here. So we hide here. So we remove all the deep cervical fascia. Now when we remove it, we find ourselves inside the neck. This muscle here is going to be called the sternocleidomastoid, and the sternocleidomastoid has two heads. It's going to originate at the mastoid process and going to insert with its two head, one at the clavicular portion and one at the sternal portion. So you have the sternal head, which is going to articulate to the manubrium, and one at the clavicular portion. So this is the sternocleidomastoid. So with the sternocleidomastoid again, we can see the motion, we can see the action of sternocleidomastoid. The action of sternocleidomastoid can either be as such, which is lateral flexion, or the main action is anterior flexion. So the action of sternocleidomastoid is shown here. So we have a lateral flexion with the sternocleidomastoid, and we also have another flexion which is the anterior flexion. So let's see the other action, which is anterior flexion. So we go back again to motion of the sternocleidomastoid, and we have again the anterior flexion. So this is the anterior flexion, as you can see here, performed by the sternocleidomastoid muscle. Now, after having the anterior flexion, now we can pass now to the next one, the nervous supply to the sternocleidomastoid. So from here, we see that the nervous supply to the sternocleidomastoid is going to be from the spinal accessory nerve. Spinal accessory nerve is going to pass from this spinal cord. It's going to move up in the foramen magnum, pass into this the jugular foramen, now descend with the vagus nerve to find itself here on the spinal cord. So that's the spinal accessory nerve. So now we also have the arteries which is involved here, and the artery which is involved with the circulation, we have this artery. So we have the superior thyroid artery which supplies part of the sternocleidomastoid. We have the occipital artery still. So all these are the arteries that are involved. We have the superior thyroid artery, occipital artery, the suprascapular artery which starts from the subclavian artery here. So suprascapular artery gives part, the superior thyroid artery gives part, the occipital artery gives part, and the posterior auricular artery are the different arteries which are involved here. So now, after visualizing the sternocleidomastoid, you can now remove the sternocleidomastoid. So we hide it. So we hide it on both sides. So now we have the sternocleidomastoid being removed. Now we pass to the next muscle here superficially. So this next muscle is going to be called the sternothyroid. So sternothyroid because it connects the sternum to the hyoid bone here. So this is why we call sternothyroid. Now we can see the action of the sternothyroid. So motion of the sternothyroid, we need to know that it's used to depress. So the motion of the sternothyroid is that the sternothyroid is used to depress the hyoid bone. So these are the infrahyoid bones. Infrahyoid bones are used to depress the hyoid bones downward. So now let's see the nerve involved in the infrahyoid bone. We isolate it. So when we isolate it, we realize that the nerve which is involved in infrahyoid bone is so we have two nerves. We have the superior root of the ansa cervicalis. So the ansa cervicalis is the nerve, is the plexus is coming from the cervical plexus. So we need to know that the cervical plexus have the ansa cervicalis, the descendants hypoglossy. It also have some other minor roots which can go to the thyroid, and some other one which can go to the sternothyroid, and which can go to the sternothyroid and all that. So we have this one is supplied by the superior root of the ansa cervicalis and the inferior root of the ansa cervicalis. Ansa cervicalis come as such is going to have a superior root here. So this one here above here is going to be the superior root of ansa cervicalis, and here is the inferior root of ansa cervicalis. And ansa cervicalis takes from C1 and goes all through to C4. So this is the characteristic of ansa cervicalis. Now the next one we can now visualize the arterial supply. You need to know that arterial supply here will be as such. It will receive from the superior thyroid artery here and also the lingual artery here. So now after visualizing the sternothyroid muscle, we are going to hide the sternothyroid muscle on both sides. So we hide. Now after visualizing the sternothyroid muscle, we can pass now to the next muscle here. This muscle here is called the sternothyroid because it connects the sternum to the thyroid larynx. So now we visualize the sternothyroid. We see the nervous supply. You need to know that the sternothyroid is also an infrahyoid muscle. So it's used to, now in this case, going to depress the thyroid because it's directly connected to the thyroid. And now since it depresses the thyroid, you know that the thyroid is also connected via the thyroid membrane with the hyoid. They are not distinct. This is why since it depresses the thyroid, it's also going to disperse the thyroid, the hyoid, and so it's going to be its action in depression of the hyoid is going to be maintained. So you have the nerve here, you can visualize the nerve and isolate it. So the nerve involved with the sternothyroid are the superior and inferior root of the ansa cervicalis still. So now we come at this position, we remove the sternothyroid, and here we also remove the sternothyroid. So you see that superficial to the sternothyroid, you have the sternothyroid. So sternothyroid is first there. Now we come again here. This muscle is going to be the omohyoid. Now this is superior belly of the omohyoid, and this is the inferior belly of the omohyoid here. So the belly of this omohyoid, you need to know origin and insertion of the omohyoid. So where does omohyoid originate? So we have the different origin and insertion of the omohyoid. The omohyoid originates at the level of the hyoid and is going to insert here. So we have the lower border of the hyoid lateral to the sternothyroid. So this is lower border of the hyoid here, and this is the insertion, and we have the origin at this point here, at this other portion here. So omohyoid is going to end at this portion here, and that portion is on the ribs below here. So if the omohyoid, so it's going to end at the portion here. This portion here is going to be called the inferior. This is the inferior belly, but this is a certain ligament, so we can call it as such. Now we can pass down to the nerve, the nerve of the omohyoid, the nerves involving omohyoid stimulation. So the nerve involving omohyoid stimulation, when you isolate it, you have this is still the superior root of ansa cervicalis. Now going down to the inferior belly of the omohyoid, to the inferior belly of the omohyoid, now the nerve which is involved with it isolation is now nerve involved with the stimulation is now instead we have in this case the inferior root of the ansa cervicalis and not the superior one. So for the superior belly, we have the superior belly of the superior root of ansa cervicalis, and for the inferior belly, we have the inferior root of ansa cervicalis. So now we can remove the omohyoid. So hide, we take again other omohyoid, we hide. So we present ourselves again much more closer to the larynx. So now when we are closer to the larynx as such, we need again to place, since we are inside the neck, we want to visualize the other organs of the neck. So we are going to place the endocrine organs. So for us to visualize the thyroid gland. So now the thyroid gland is going to be shown as such here. So this is the thyroid gland, which is also inside the neck, and the thyroid gland is going to be supplied by this nerve and these arteries. So as an organ of the neck, we have the thyroid gland. So let's visualize the thyroid gland. So the thyroid gland, if we isolate it, we have this. So this is the thyroid gland consisting of the two lobes of the thyroid gland here, and this is the isthmus of the thyroid gland. Now we see that the nerves which are involved in the supply of the thyroid gland are going to be the superior thyroid nerve, and the arteries are going to be the superior thyroid artery and the inferior thyroid artery. The inferior thyroid artery comes from the thyrocervical trunk. The superior thyroid artery comes from the external carotid artery. And the venous drainage, we have the superior thyroid vein, we have the middle thyroid vein, and the inferior thyroid vein. The superior thyroid vein is going to drain into the internal jugular vein, the middle also into the internal jugular vein, and the inferior is going to drain directly into the subclavian vein. So that is for the thyroid gland, and the thyroid gland is used for the production of thyroxine, which is used in the control of the metabolic rate of the body. So we can remove now the thyroid gland, hide it. So after the removal of thyroid gland, we can now pass again inside. We can visualize this particular muscle. There's a particular muscle here which can be seen. So this muscle, that muscle is called, so let's try to visualize again that muscle. So we start by removing this. So when we have this, I continue removing, I hide this, I hide this. So we continue removing. We have the thyroid, the sternothyroid here, and this other one, the sternothyroid. So we continue, we remove this, we hide this, and this one we hide this, this one still hide this. Now we have other muscles here. This particular muscle at this location here is going to be called the scalenus anterior muscle. This is the scalenus anterior muscle at this position here. So this is scalenus anterior, and the scalenus anterior has origin anterior tubercle of the transverse process of cervical vertebrae C3 to C6 at this location. So if I isolate, you can see the location of the anterior scalenus. You see its origin C3 to C4 and its insert at this portion here. So for anterior scalenus muscle. So for anterior scalenus muscle, you can see now the nerve of anterior scalenus muscle. So the nerve of anterior scalenus muscle is going to, if you isolate, you're going to see that anterior scalenus muscle are receiving from the fifth cervical nerve, the sixth cervical nerve, and the fourth cervical nerve. So it's from fourth, fifth, and sixth cervical nerve directly. So it does not pass through the cervical plexus. So now we have the next one here. So you can remove the anterior, and a very clinical good thing to note is that the anterior scalenus muscle is passing anterior to the subclavian artery. Now what passes anterior now to the anterior scalenus muscle is going to be the subclavian vein. So that's a landmark which shows. So anterior cervical artery here, posterior to anterior scalenus muscle, we have the subclavian artery, and anterior to it, you have the subclavian vein. So you can hide the scalenus muscle. When you hide the scalenus muscle, you can pass to the medial scalenus muscle. So the medial scalenus muscle now, or scalenus medius. Now in this case, you can isolate it to visualize origin and insertion. Origin is going to be the transverse process of one. You have this. You have the C. You have C2, C3, C4, C5, C6, and C7. So from C2 to C7 are the transverse processes, and you see that it is on rib 2 that it ends. The rib 2, a ridge on rib 2. After that, you can now visualize the motion of the scalenus muscle. The scalenus muscle motion are going to be in this direction. So until the different scalenus muscle act in this direction. Now after having the different scalenus muscle action, we can now find the arterial supply to the scalenus. The arterial supply to the scalenus, we see that it's ascending cervical artery, and we've initially seen that ascending cervical artery was coming from the costocervical trunk of the subclavian artery. So now we are going to hide the scalenus and pass much more posterior, and here we have the posterior scalenus muscle. The posterior scalenus muscle, you see that if you isolate it, you are going to realize it's coming from this cervical vertebrae, from cervical vertebrae 4, 5, and even 6 at times. So transverse process of this cervical vertebrae 4 to 6. So and now it's going to origin insert on rib 2 and not on rib 1, as in case of anterior and medial scalenus muscle. So now we can visualize now the nerve supply to the medial scalenus muscle, and the nerve supply to medial scalenus muscle is the 7th cervical. We have the 7th cervical, the 6th cervical nerve, and the 8th cervical nerve. So we have the 7th, the 6th, and 8th. So now, after having the anterior scalenus muscle action, we can now pass to find the arterial supply of anterior scalenus muscle, and the arterial supply is the ascending cervical stele. So we can hide the anterior scalenus muscle. We can pass much more posterior here, and here you are going to have the levator scapulae. If you isolate the levator scapulae, you see that the levator scapulae is one of the muscles which are involved in the upper limb. So that's why it starts from here and is used to elevate the scapula. From the name you see levator scapulae. It starts from you see at this position. This is C1 vertebrae. So it starts from C1, C2, C3, and C4. So it involves C1 to C4, and it's going to insert into the medial border of the scapula. I'm going to do a protraction. It's going to do a protraction. So it's going to do a retraction instead and an elevation, but the main action is in elevation. So you can see now the motion here. We have the shoulder elevation and we have the spine lateral flexion. Now the question is, why does it do a spine lateral flexion? It does a spine lateral flexion because of Newton's law of third motion, Newton's third law of motion. We initially said that Newton's third law of motion states that for any action force there is an equal but opposite reaction force. Now what happens is that there can be an action force on the neck and there's an equal but opposite reaction force on the scapula. So if you have, so what happens is that if the body is rigid, you are going to see that the levator scapulae this time is going to pull. If this body is rigid because of other muscle contraction, the levator scapulae is going to pull the neck in this direction and do the first action force. Now, still visualizing the Newton's second law, Newton's third law of motion, you realize that what if you is going to also do an elevation of the shoulder. Now the elevation of the shoulder is in case where the neck muscle is rigid, the neck is rigid and the scapula is moving. So from here you see that the neck will be rigid and the scapula will be moving and going up. So these are the two laws. The Newton's third law is very useful in the movement of the different muscles of the body. So after having the scapulae done, so we can remove now the scapulae. We have the nerve first. We can visualize the nerve of the scapulae. Now the nerve of scapulae we can isolate first, and we see that it's going to be the dorsal scapular nerve. The dorsal scapular nerve comes already from the plexus of the brachial plexus. So we have dorsal scapular nerve, we have the fourth cervical nerve, we have the third cervical nerve. So all these are coming around here. So dorsal scapular nerve comes from brachial plexus. So we see that it's already an extension of the upper limb here. So now we can already remove the levator scapulae, we can hide it. So we see that there inside again the neck we have other muscle here. So this other muscle, as you can see posteriorly, we are going to have this first muscle is going to be called the Splenius Capitis. So the Splenius Capitis has has its particular nervous and arterial supply. So the nervous supply here of the Splenius Capitis will be shown here. So the first thing is to know about Splenius Capitis is going to be the origin. The origin is from occipital, from the mastoid process of the temporal bone, and it's going to insert on the spinous process of the number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, and number 5, number 6, and number 7. So from number 2 to number 7, it's also involving the thoracic vertebrae. So number 2 to number 7 and T2. This is T1, T2, T3. So it's from the C2, C3 it's from C2, C3 to T3. So it involves from C3 to T3. So you have it. So that's the action. And now the nerve, we said the nervous supply will be from here. We have the second cervical nerve, and the third cervical nerve here, second and third cervical nerve. We need to know that the nerves which are located posteriorly here, nerves which are mostly located posteriorly, are due to the posterior rami of the spinal nerve, and they don't usually enter into a plexus. It is the muscles which are mostly located in the anterior part which are located in muscles. Now we can hide it. We can visualize now the other muscle we can hide on lateral on both sides. So we have this. Now the next muscle which is located here, this muscle is going to be called the Splenius cervicis muscle. This is Splenius cervicis muscle. And now you see that the Splenius cervicis muscle, you can isolate it to visualize the origin and insertion. The origin will be on these two parts, the transverse process of C1 and C2, and the insertion will be on T4, 5, 6, and 7. at times. So this is the origin and insertion, and then the innervation will be this fifth cervical nerve. We can visualize inside that there is visualize 1, 2, 3, 4. The first cervical nerve start above the T1 vertebrae. You need to know that the first cervical nerve start above the T1 vertebrae, while the last cervical nerve ends below the C7 vertebrae. This is why we have 7 cervical nerves. We have 8 cervical nerves, while we have 7 cervical vertebrae. But in case of the other vertebrae, you need to know that the first cervical nerve is always going to start below the vertebrae. That's why they are going to correspond with the number of vertebrae. So the thoracic portion have 12 cervical. We have 12 cervical nerves. Lumbar portion have 5 cervical nerves, and sacral portion have 5 cervical nerves. But in this case of cervical, we have 8 cervical nerves. Now, so in the lumbar portion, we have 12 thoracic nerve instead. In the thoracic portion, we have 12 thoracic nerves. In the lumbar portion, we have 5 lumbar nerves, and in the sacral portion, we have 5 sacral nerves. So it's starting from feet, we have feet 6, 7, and 8. So now the arterial supply to that particular nerve posteriorly, we have the occipital artery, since it's posterior, and we have the deep cervical artery. So now we have seen the splenius cervicis muscle. Now we can hide the splenius cervicis muscle on both sides. So we hide here too. Now this muscle here is called the semispinalis, the semispinalis muscle. And the semispinalis muscle has a certain nervous supply and certain motion. So let's start with the isolation first of this muscle. So when we isolate this muscle, we visualize that it originates from the superior nuchal line, and it's going to insert at the level of the lateral processes. A lateral process of T1 from the C's, from the different C's to an end at level of T5. So lateral processes from C1 to T5. These are the different parts which are involved. Now, having seen the different parts which are involved, you can now find the motion. The motion can be either lateral flexion, can be head extension, and it can also be semispinalis. So these are the different. So we are going to have this muscle. Now let's see the motion. We see that the motion is you have lateral flexion, head extension, and head cervical rotation. But now the most prominent motion, since it's going to be located posteriorly, so the first motion will be this one. It's going to move like this. So you have this extension. So let's visualize the head extension. So the head extension is in this direction. It extends in this direction. So after the flexion of the other muscle, it's going to extend in this direction. So that's the direction in which it moves. So this flexion is not its motion. So it's after the flexion that is extension due to the semispinalis. So now this is the motion that semispinalis perform. Now, after having seen the motion of semispinalis muscle, we can see now the nervous supply to semispinalis muscle, and we isolate it. So let's visualize the nervous supply. The nervous supply is that the greater occipital nerve and the third cervical nerve. So the greater occipital nerve is a nerve which is still located on the posterior. On the posterior is always located due to the posterior rami of the spinal nerve. So greater occipital nerve does not come from the cervical plexus. It comes from the posterior rami of the cervical nerve. So that's why I've initially told you that if you want to know the nerves which are located on the posterior, if you want to know the nerves which are supplying the posterior muscles, note that they are always nerves from the posterior rami. So they are nerves that are going to move through the extension due to the extension of the muscle. So since the muscle is extending all through here, so the greater occipital nerve is going to pass, and even the third cervical nerve is going to supply it. So now, after having the muscles here, we can have the arterial supply. Now, the arterial supply, we have different muscles with different arteries which are going to supply the muscle. So let's isolate to visualize the different arteries. So we have the different arteries involved. The first artery is going to be the occipital artery here. We have the occipital artery here. The next artery, we have the dorsal branch of the foot posterior intercostal artery. Now we also have the dorsal branch of the foot posterior intercostal artery. We have deep cervical artery. We've seen the origin and all this dorsal branch of feet. We have the intercostal artery. We also have the dorsal branch of intercostal artery and all that. Now we can we have already visualized all the different ones which are involved here. So this was the semi-spinalis. So we can remove now. We can hide the semi-spinalis such that we can visualize the different muscles. Now this muscle here is the levator scapulae muscle on the lateral side. You can hide it. We have already seen the motion. Now let's come again and visualize other muscle. This muscle here is called the scalenus posterior. So we have a different scalenus. After having the different anterior, middle, and after having, you have already visualized the scalenus posterior on the other side. So you can hide it here. We come here, scalenus medius, we hide it, and we come here, scalenus anterior, we hide it. So we have different scalenus visualized. Omohyoid was already visualized. We come and we hide it. Now, the muscles of the back, the posterior side of the neck, we have the longissimus capitis. This is the longissimus capitis. Now, the motion of the longissimus capitis can either be extension or hyperextension and lateral flexion. But what the motion that will be mainly involved with longissimus capitis is this type of flexion. Since it is lateral, it is going to do an extension and a lateral flexion. So we are going to visualize how it's going to do lateral flexion because it's much more lateral, and since posterior is going to do an extension still. So it's going to contract from this point here and it's going to push it till this point here. So this is how longissimus is going to perform its action. So let's visualize. Still by Newton's third law, you are going to visualize the action of this particular muscle. So the action of lateral flexion will be in this direction since they are located posteriorly and laterally. So this is the lateral flexion. The extension will instead be in this direction. So we've seen the muscle longissimus capitis. So now let's visualize the next muscle. So from here we can remove the longissimus capitis. So when you come again, you exit the multiple selection. Here's the longissimus capitis. You hide it on this side, and you come on the other side. Here is the longissimus capitis on the right side. You hide it. Now you also have another muscle here, and this muscle is the longissimus cervicis. The longissimus cervicis, you have the motion that's going to perform, and that motion is lateral flexion and extension that's going to perform. Now you need to isolate in order to visualize the original insertion of longissimus cervicis. Longissimus cervicis has this origin here from C to C3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The transfer process of C3 to C7, and it's going to end at this portion at the transfer processes of T2 to T4. So that's the original insertion. Now the nerve of the longissimus, we need to know the nerves of the longissimus cervicis, and that is slightly similar with that involved with longissimus capitis. So the nerve involved here, you need to know that it's going to be the nerve, the posterior rami of the cervical to thoracic nerve posteriorly here, because it's going to extend all through the bands. So in order for you to know the nerves, you need to know that since it's a posterior muscle, it is going to be this posterior rami, and it's going to be posterior rami at the particular location of the muscle. So at this position is going to be the cervical, the C3. At this position is going to be C4. At this position is going to be C5. At this position is C6. and you need to know that all of the C's are going to be posterior rami. All of the spinal nerve are going to be posterior rami. Now you come to the next muscle. You see we have already seen the splenius cervicis. We can hide the muscle on both sides. So we come here again and start the longissimus cervicis. So you have this muscle. Now the next muscle is this one here. So is the iliocostalis cervicis. So this muscle now here is the iliocostalis cervicis, and the iliocostalis cervicis, you need to know that, to know the action of the iliocostalis cervicis. You see that it's a very small muscle. The action is not going to be very prominent. And now the nervous supply, the nervous supply is going to be due to the band that is moving. So you see that the iliocostalis cervicis is starting from that point to this point. So you see that it's going to be the nerve which are all through here. So all through in this position. You have occipital, the dorsal branch of the fourth posterior intercostal artery. So you have the different, these are the arterial supply insert. The arterial supply are going to the occipital artery, the branch of the intercostal, the cervical artery, the intercostal artery, and all the vertebral artery even. So the vertebral arch is also there because we've initially said that the vertebral arch has is not entering into the seventh transverse foramina. It's only going to enter, descend a branch which is going to enter there, and that branch is going to supply the muscles at the back. So let's come now and visualize now instead the venous, the nervous supply. And the nervous supply, when we isolate, we see that they are going to be the rami all through the bands they are moving. So we have this rami, since it's moving from C to C4 to T5, all the fibers which are in C, from C5 now to T5, are going to be involved in the supply of the muscle. So now we can remove the iliocostalis cervicis muscle. So when we hide it, we come here, we hide the iliocostalis cervicis muscle, and come on the other side, we hide the iliocostalis cervicis muscle. Now we continue coming here, we have the posterior muscle here is the spinalis cervicis muscle, and the spinalis cervicis muscle has also nervous location. You see, you have to know the nervous location as from their origin and insertion. Their origin is here. You have the spinous process, and the insertion are here. So you are going to realize that they are going to be the posterior rami of C7 to C8 to T2, because you need to know that since starting from C7, the fiber which come below C7 is going to be C8. So C8 is going to supply, and the fiber which come below T2 is going to be T2. So T2 is going to be supplied. Now let's come and visualize the nerve. So you're going to see that it's going to be exactly the same thing. So you see that here the fibers are coming exactly from, we have 8 cervical nerve which is involved. You have the 4th cervical nerve, the 6th cervical nerve, all that, even the thoracic nerves. Now from here we can remove this, and we can remove also the splenius cervicis muscle on the other side. So we also have this muscle here, and this muscle is going to be called the semispinalis cervicis. So the semispinalis cervicis, you have still the arterial, the nervous supply. In order to know the nervous supply, you need to know the origin and insertion. Origin is going to be at T1 to T6 vertebrae, and the insertion is going to be on the origin and transverse process of T1 to T6 vertebrae, and insertion is on the spinous process of spinous. The insertion is from here, it starts from here, and it's going to end on the spinous process of C2 to C5 vertebrae. The nervous supply is going to pass through all the bands of the fiber. So now you can hide it. You come again here, semispinalis cervicis, hide it. Now this other muscle here is called the multifidus muscle. You have the multifidus muscle here. The multifidus muscle, we have the origin and the insertion. The origin of multifidus muscle can be seen when we isolate it. So when you isolate the multifidus muscle, you see that the origin, it will be equals to the posterior superior iliac spine at this portion here, posterior superior iliac spine, the dorsal portion of the sacrum here, the mammillary process, and then it's going to move all through and connect the spinous process of the lumbar, the thoracic, and the cervical vertebrae. So this is already a bone, the muscle involved in the back. So I want to remove it right now. So let's come back to the anterior portion of the neck. So coming back to the anterior portion of the neck, we have the these other muscles here. We have this anterior muscle, the thyroid muscle, and the thyroid muscle, we said that it's so infrahyoid, so it's used to depress the hyoid bone. So we have this. So we have the one which is involved here, the nervous supply which is involved. The thyroid muscle is going to, when we isolate it, we can find it. So you find that it's going to be the first cervical nerve, and that will be the descendens hypoglossal. The first cervical nerve plus the hypoglossal nerve is going to form the descendens hypoglossal, which is going to supply this muscle there. So we can hide it on both sides. So here is also going to be thyroid. We can hide it. Now, after having the thyroid, we have this. Now, these other muscles are very good to be seen when you are visualizing the larynx. So now, upon the next section, we are going to visualize the larynx. So this tutorial was involved with the different muscles involved in the neck. So the other muscles which are involved in the neck can be these other muscles here. This muscle here is a mylohyoid muscle. The mylohyoid muscle is seen here. We have it's a suprahyoid muscle. We have the nerve location. You need to know that the mylohyoid is by the mylohyoid branch of the trigeminal nerve. You see that it is the mandibular branch of the trigeminal nerve supplying it. Now upon the next portion, we've seen the mylohyoid muscle. So we can remove the mylohyoid muscle, we hide it. So when you hide the mylohyoid muscle, we have this other muscle here. So this other muscle here are going to be called the geniohyoid muscle, and they receive their innervation from the hypoglossal nerve. The geniohyoid muscle receives their innervation from hypoglossal nerve. So this other muscle here is the anterior belly of the digastric, and it receives from the nerve to the mylohyoid. So that same nerve of the mylohyoid nerve is going to supply this anterior belly of the digastric. But the posterior belly of the digastric, which is located here, posterior belly is supplied by inside the digastric branch of the fascial nerve, but the anterior belly is supplied by the mylohyoid branch of the trigeminal nerve. So you have this. Now you have the different muscles which are involved with the tongue here. So this muscle here is going to be the hyoglossus. You have the hyoglossus. If you fade the mandible, you fade it, you can visualize other muscles. This is the hyoglossus. Internally here, you can turn and visualize this muscle. So this muscle here is going to be the genioglossus. It's connecting from the genial tubercle, superior genial tubercle, but the inferior genial tubercle are connecting the anterior belly of the digastric and the geniohyoid muscle. But here is going to be the genioglossus. So you have genioglossus, you have the hyoglossus, you also have the palatoglossus here. This one here is going to be superior pharyngeal constrictors. So those are the pharyngeal constrictors. We also have the palatoglossus. So palatoglossus, which are muscles, and we have the hyoglossus, we have the genioglossus, and the palatoglossus. These are different muscles which are involved in the tongue, and those muscles are the extensor, the external muscles. The internal muscles of the tongue are going to be the we have the vertical, we have the oblique, and we have the horizontal muscles involved in the tongue. So now from here we've seen all the muscles which are used in the head, in the neck. So from here we say thanks for your kind attention. Please don't forget to like and subscribe for Science Makers. Thank you.